I see this as an extension of that 7-year-old's dream to get to the moon. And so it's really exciting for me personally to be a part of a lunar mission, of a lunar company, to contribute to humanity's return to the moon this time to stay.
Hey, SpaceWatchers, and welcome to our new episode of our Space Café Radio, the show about inspiring people in the industry. And today, I have the honor to have Garan, the chairman of ispace US and a retired NASA astronaut in our show. So, Ron, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Torsten. Thanks for being there.
Thank you so much, Ron, for joining us today. You've recently taken on a new role as chairman of ispace. Can you start by sharing what inspired you to accept this position and what you hope to accomplish in this new capacity?
Yeah, so I have been the CEO of ispace US for 22 months, and we're at the stage in the development of the company now where greater focus needs to be put on stakeholder engagement, business development, and really taking in strategy, looking at long-term strategy, where we're going to go. And the company right now is at a place where day-to-day operations are being run very well. And it frees some bandwidth for us to look more towards the future. Elizabeth Christ, who is a former EVP of programs, has taken over as CEO. Extremely capable, extremely competent leader, and the company's in really good hands.
A lot of people are curious about the new CEO, as you just mentioned, Elizabeth Christ. How do you see her leadership steering the company's direction?
Wow, I don't even know where to start. She's such a talented person. But really, her biggest strength is in program management, is being able to take really complex challenges and boil them down into incremental steps, and then driving the process to make sure that we're continuously pulling in schedule, we're continuously staying on budget, we're continuously looking for ways to innovate, to do things better. And so she's extremely gifted at that, but she's also gifted at inspiring and motivating folks to do the seemingly impossible. What we're trying to do is really hard, and at times teams can get discouraged by the sheer weight of what they're trying to accomplish, and she's very good at being able to motivate folks through those really tough times.
Yeah, as it was said, we do these things because they are hard.
Yeah. We don't choose to go to the moon because it's easy. We chose to go to the moon because we thought it was going to be easy.
How is ispace US progressing? So what is the status of its operation and what milestones should we be looking out for?
So ispace US, the main role right now is to design, build, and fly lunar landers to be able to deliver payloads to the lunar surface. Our first mission, which is CLPS Task Order CP-12 that we're doing in partnership with Draper Laboratories. First mission out of the chute for us is a far side mission near the South Pole, right? And so it's first time in history a commercial company will land on the far side. The South Pole region is very rugged, it's very difficult, and it also requires us to deploy 2 relay satellites on the way in. So in order for us to communicate with our lander once it's on the surface, we need these satellites. So that's...
Just to repeat it, South Pole?
Yeah.
Not easy. Far side? Not easy. Plus 2 relay satellites in the same mission.
Yes.
Good luck.
Yeah, thanks. But we're progressing along really well. It's an incredible technical challenge. It's an incredible programmatic challenge, the way we're structured. The mission is not fully funded by customers or by the government. So there's a tremendous amount of investment that we need to put into this mission to make sure that it's successful. And we're doing it because we believe in the importance of creating a cislunar economy. We believe that by missions like this, that these missions can serve as a catalyst to spark a commercial market. And if we get a commercial cislunar market going, then our growth, our development will take off exponentially. And that is what I believe is needed in order for us to have a permanent, significant human presence on the moon. And I think that's a requirement for a positive or restorative future that could come from that, all the benefits that could come to life on Earth by creating that cislunar economy. And so that's why we're in this business.
Before we come to talk about the lunar economy, as you just mentioned, I would like to understand what kind of heritage, what kind of legacy you can take into the Apex lander from the colleagues in Japan and in Luxembourg, which are, as we speak, currently fly the M2 mission.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is substantial, but substantial over the last year. So about a year ago, we established TAA, a Technical Assistance Agreement, which is a license from the U.S. government to be able to exchange technical data. which is export controlled. And since we've got that in place, we've had a very robust exchange of data, exchange of lessons learned. Nobody in iSpace US has ever flown to the moon, but our colleagues in Japan are on their second mission right now, and it's set to land on June 5th of this year. And so there's a tremendous amount of lessons learned that come from those missions that we're now able to roll in. The design of the Apex 1.0 lander is somewhat informed by the design lessons of the Resilience lander, which, as I said, is on its way to the moon for the second time. Right now, we've had our colleagues in Japan reviewing things like our CDRs, our critical design reviews. We have iSpace US employees right now sitting in the mission control in Tokyo on this mission 2 that we had the same folks on mission 1. We've had iSpace US employees at the Cape down at the Kennedy Space Center for final integration during launch back in January. We will have our colleagues from Japan and Luxembourg here as well on our mission. And so there is a deep collaboration there. We also share hardware, we share software, we share supply chain. And so there's a lot of lessons learned from that as well.
As someone who has been in space, and it's a more private question than a professional one, so how does it feel? You have seen the moon from space, and I would say even these 400 kilometers closer to the moon matters on this 300-something thousand kilometers. How's it feeling to go now back to the moon with hardware? Not with humans in that stage, but still with something you built, you worked on.
I knew I wanted to be an astronaut since July 20th, 1969. And so it was on that day, as I know, where we had the first moon landing. So I remember there I was, a small child at the time, but I remember watching those first footsteps on the moon along with millions and millions of people all around the world. And that's the day that I decided I wanted to be an astronaut, that I wanted to go to space. I wanted to go to the moon. And so I fell short of that goal, and I only made it to low Earth orbit, but I see this as an extension of that 7-year-old's dream to get to the moon. And so it's really exciting for me personally to be a part of a lunar mission, of a lunar company, to contribute to humanity's return to the moon this time to stay. And so that's a great personal motivation of mine.
Thank you for this answer. Speaking of the lunar economy, and many of the things we're talking here about are resonating with me very deeply as an ex-PT scientist, employee, and dreaming going back to the moon as well. So could you elaborate on iSpace vision for the lunar economy? Because if I remember correctly, you position iSpace primarily as a logistics company, but logistics is just one element in the entire ecosystem, if we want to say so. And what does a lunar economy look like, and how does your iSpace plans lead to this development?
Yeah. So the motto of iSpace is expand the planet, expand our future. Right. And so we believe that if we expand the sphere of human presence to cislunar space, right, we expand the radius of the Earth to encompass the moon, if you will, that will have tremendous benefits to all life on Earth. And so in order to do that, we are predominantly, and we see ourselves as a lunar infrastructure company. We're focusing at first on transportation. So we have 3 subsidiaries. We have iSpace Europe, which is building lunar rovers, iSpace Japan and iSpace US that are building separate, completely different lunar landers. And so that's the transportation piece, right? But that's just the enabler for the real infrastructure that needs to come in, the in situ resource utilization, the power generation, habitats, electrolysis of ice that we find on the South Pole and turning it into rocket fuel or breathable air. Those are the type of things that we want to be in. And we want to be in it to support the goals of the Artemis Accords. We want to be in it to support the establishment of a commercial market, because we believe that if everything is just done how it's done historically or traditionally, where the government funds these missions and maybe experiments are done, and a lot of advancement can occur, but it's linear advancement. In order to spark real exponential growth, you need to introduce commercial markets into this. And if you look at helium-3, for instance, last I heard numbers, a kilogram of helium-3 on the Earth is worth about $20 million. And so we think that helium-3 is abundant on the moon. There's a lot of challenges to that. You have to get it. You have to be able to extract it, you have to separate it, return it to Earth. There's a lot that needs to go into it. But that's a perfect example of the increase of benefit to the inhabitants of Earth by what's on the moon, right?
Why this expansion as humanity to the moon help us here on Earth?
Helium-3, for instance, is used in medical imaging. It's also seen as a clean fuel for future fusion reactors. It's proposed that there's enough helium-3 on the moon to power fusion reactors to power the Earth for centuries, right? And so with clean energy, clean renewable energy, right? And from a global warming point of view, from a power generation point of view, that alone, I think, improve life on Earth. But there's also scientific advancements that can occur. We could put radio telescopes on the far side of the moon, shielded from the electronic noise of the Earth, and discover more about our place in the universe. There's rare Earth materials on the moon that can be used, and things like electronics. The list goes on and on. And so there is a tremendous benefit there. You could build solar farms on the moon that don't have clouds above them and beam that energy back to the Earth, or use it on the moon for other processes. The moon opens up a doorway to the exploration of the rest of the solar system. If we have a permanent, significant human presence on the moon, we have industry on the moon. We could start developing the rocket fuel on the moon that we could launch from the moon to other places in the solar system. The list goes on.
I do have to make a short pause here to digest what you just said, because it all sounds too good for me to be true for the situation that we are living on Earth. We do have the political aspects to consider, not just on the moon, also on the moon. I don't want to go into that direction, but how do you see ispace navigating the complexity of international collaboration and competition as it pushes forward to this lunar domain? So you're, as you mentioned before, in Japan, in Europe, here in America. And at the moment, the geopolitics are also among our allies has a hard time.
That's a tough question, because we focus on the things that we have control over, and there's very little control we have over the geopolitics other than to be very cognizant of it and try and navigate that. But I'm of the firm belief that we're not going to accomplish what we need to accomplish in space, on the moon, or on Earth unless we have robust international collaboration and cooperation. That is probably best evidenced by the success of the International Space Station, where 15 nations came together. Some of these nations weren't always the best of friends. Some were on opposite sides of the Cold War, opposite sides of the space race. Some fought wars against each other, but somehow they found a way to set aside their differences and do this amazing thing in space and build probably the most complicated, complex structure ever built and to build it in space. And so why were we able to do that in the geopolitical climate that we had? We were able to do that because we, as a species, as humanity, decided to set aside our differences, to set aside fear, and to embrace awe and wonder, right? We found something that we agreed upon, the awe and wonder of space exploration, and we decided to work together on that. And what came of that was a certain level of personal relationships starting to develop, trust started to develop, and that created a platform that we can now use to jump off from to address the things that we don't agree on. So what we usually do as a species is find the things that we don't agree on, and we try and force those things. Again, the International Space Station is an example. Back in the early 90s, when there was debate of whether or not to bring the Russians into the ISS program, there was a lot of detractors. They said the Russians are doing X, Y, and Z, and until they stop doing X, Y, and Z, we shouldn't do anything with them. But those voices didn't win out. And so we try and use the things that we agree on as a stick to force the things that we don't agree on. And because of that, because we brought the Russians into the space station when Columbia happened, that decision saved the space station, because we would have not continued to build the space station. It would have probably ended right there. Or despite everything that is happening right now in the political climate, especially in Ukraine, we still have Russians flying on American spacecraft and Americans flying on Russian spacecraft, right? So there's a dialogue, there's a door that's kept open for that, right? And why we're doing that, again, is because we're focusing on the awe and wonder of space exploration. And I think that is a model that can be applied across the board. And to circle back to your original question, I'm hoping that the awe and wonder of creating a permanent, significant human presence on the moon is enough of a catalyst to navigate the geopolitical climate that we have right now, especially the negative aspects of that, the hypernationalism, the closing borders, the trade issues that we have right now, that this, in some cases, will rise above that. And I'm optimistic because it's proven that it has. Even in the darkest times, it's risen above it. Even at the height of the Cold War, we still had Apollo-Soyuz, or Soyuz-Apollo, depending who you're talking to, which was at a really tumultuous time.
Will it include the Chinese as well?
That's a great question. In the U.S. political climate, I don't see that happening.
But at the end of the day, we will have then two camps on the moon.
That looks like the direction that we're going in right now.
Let us summarize. You talk about the Apex mission, and it sounds that you have a lot on your plate. So what's next up for you personally as you step into this new role as a chairman? And where do you see iSpace in the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, so I'll answer the second part first. Where I see iSpace in the next 5 or 10 years, I think we'll have several more missions under under our belt, successful missions. I'm confident in the technical team here, the engineering team, to really come up with a solution that's going to work. And despite the fact of how challenging our first mission is going to be, we're on a really good path. I do see, again, maybe I'm being optimistic, but I do see a commercial market starting to develop, and we need to find a path to profitability. So lunar missions right now are not profitable. Unless you get a cost-plus contract from a government, you're probably not going to be profitable. But there is increasing demand signals coming from the commercial markets that could lead to profitability. And that's where I see ispace in the next 5 years is, if not profitable, on a path to profitability, long-term profitability. And to me, long-term profitability enables R&D. And if you get robust R&D going, then your tech roadmap can really start to develop those infrastructure needs that are going to be required to return humans to the moon, this time to stay. And that's where I see us in the next 5 years. Me personally, I'm going to devote 98% of my time to making that happen, to putting ispace on a path to profitability, to make sure that we have the right balance between government and commercial revenue coming in, to make sure that we've made the right investments in things like vertical integration and increased technology and things like survive the night, making the best use of the assets that we do have, like our polar orbiting lunar satellites, and making sure that we can generate revenue from those and to make significant contributions to the Artemis missions and to NASA's overarching exploration goals and the overarching exploration goals of other government space agencies, as well as the commercial market.
Great. Thank you very much, Ron, for taking the time to share your insights. That's always very inspiring to hear from someone with your experience and your vision. Thank you very much.
Vielen Dank.
Sehr gerne. And if you have further questions, reach out to us at radio@SpaceWatch.Global. If you like these or other episodes of Space Café Radio, leave us a rating on your preferred podcast platform. It is the currency of today. And if you want to stay on the pulse of the space industry, please visit our website at www.SpaceWatch.Global and subscribe to our newsletters. And of course, don't forget to become a Space Watcher. I'm Thorsten Kriening, publisher at SpaceWatch.Global, your independent perspective on space.